Hi teachers, welcome to the training video of岩倉Math and English Study Group. I'm the Chief Coordinator, Sage Taki. I think you know my name. In this video, you will be informed how you can teach your students English, but please don't misunderstand that this is a rule book. It's not. I would say it's more or less like a guideline to standardize the overall services we can offer the prospective students. Thereby you can be as creative as you can without worrying about what is not expected. Okay, first of all, let me explain it to you how our study group is different from ordinary English school, so you can draw for yourself an overall picture of what the lesson is going to be. We encourage our students to talk to themselves in English. Well, I know it sounds strange, but yes, but I have my own story to tell you. When I was young, I was in the United States. I really wanted to be able to speak English like a native English speaker, okay, and traveled to the United States for about 3 months. But I didn't improve my English that much. It's because, firstly, I did not know the grammar, English grammar, secondly, I didn't know many vocabularies. And thirdly, and more importantly, I was always hanging around with people talking a lot without listening to me. So that means I did not practice the speaking part. Usually students in Iwakura Math and English Study Group wish to improve the speaking part. So we want to give them chances to speak. In many language schools, if you see how the classes are going, it is usually the teacher always speaking, and students either only listening or nodding or saying yes, yes, but that's not what they want. So I'm sure this is not what you want either. So why not quit doing what nobody wants? Stop spoon feeding and let's offer them the most effective way to study English. Through my experience, I have come to know this is the most effective way to study English, which is to talk to oneself, himself, herself, myself, yourself in English, like the way I talk to a kettle in some videos you can find on YouTube. Now I'm going to talk about how you want your one-on-one based Skype lesson. Well, it is roughly divided into 2 parts. The first part is going to be to train them to translate from Japanese to English as fast as possible. Why translation? Well, that's actually a good question. I frequently hear Japanese students lamenting that they have difficulty speaking English, but once I start listening to them what their real issue is, I always find it is not so much speaking in English as their lack of skills to verbalize what they want to say, even in Japanese. So at first, it is very important to give them time to think what they want to say in Japanese. Then, if they have trained enough to translate the Japanese into English in less than, say, 0.01 seconds, well, I think it's safe to say that he or she is bilingual. So this is the overall method. But for the time being, let's leave the part of the self-examination in Japanese for the second half, because without the skill to translate from Japanese to English, it would not be very useful as an English lesson to verbalize their thoughts, right? So the basic thing is to encourage them to translate very easy sentences from Japanese to English, and let us use this textbook, 瞬間英作文。おかわりどんどん話すための瞬間英作文。And there are many reasons why I recommend our students, particularly this book, but let me omit the explanation for now, because I've already explained to you one powerful and strong rule that the translation part is very important, and the key is how fast the translation process is done in their mind. And of course, if the students are having difficulty with the grammars, you can explain them to your students in your own way. You can be, so please be creative. You can be creative and confident. But if you find them facing a hard time in the extremely easy grammar, such as number one, they might not know that an English sentence always requires the subject, which is not always the case in Japanese. Number two, they may not understand why and how English verbs conjugate. Like I go to school, you say I go to school, he goes to school, she goes to school. English verbs conjugate, which is not the case in Japanese. In Japanese, verbs always say the same. Number three, they make strange sentences like I am like baseball. Well, actually, you say you're supposed to say I like baseball. You don't need the verb to be here. Or he is studying English. You could either say he is studying English or he studies English. So in such a case, please use the textbook that I've written in Japanese. So you can email me if your students are having these issues. Then I will try to make the books downloadable to your PC. Okay, the students will have been able to translate their Japanese to intermediate level of English by the end of the first half of your lesson. Okay, now let me explain a little about the second half, which you really don't have to know for the time being, because there are not going to be many students who can even finish the first half of the lesson. But it's still good to know something about where the lessons are heading for. Well, as I have mentioned earlier, when Japanese people say they cannot speak English, the issue is divided into two parts. Number one, they cannot even translate easy phrases into English. Number two, they don't know what they really want to say, even in Japanese. The first issue, having been coped with already previously, all they need to do is to combine what they have studied with this, the second half of the lesson, so they can verbalize their thoughts in Japanese and instantly translate the Japanese into English. So if they have trained to do this within 0.1 second or 0.01 second, they have achieved their goal, right? So it's very important always to have them write at first what they have in mind, what they want to say in Japanese in a full sentence. If they wish to say one chunk of thought, which is about 4 or 5 sentences long, that's completely all right. But the important thing here is that they have to write it in a full sentence so they know what they're translating, okay? I have met a lot of students who are reluctant to do this, but they all ended up miserably speaking poor English, just being able to create, say, 3 or 4 words, or even worse, monosyllable word sentence, which is not what they wanted at first. They wanted to be able to speak English. That's why I entered the study group. So it happened without exception. So this process, by experience I can tell, is very important. Well, once this process is done, encourage them to use a web translation such as Google Translation, Weblio Translation, and Excite Translation. Well, I'm sure you would say that the machine process translation is not good. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yes, I totally agree with you. But their goal is not being able to speak perfect English. You know what I'm saying? Their goal is not becoming like a native English speaker with the accurate grammar. Their goal is for them to be able to express themselves with the minimum effort, with their grammar in the most understandable way, to the maximum number of English speakers in so far as they can. The goal is not being able to speak English like a native speaker, which is mostly unlikely. As you know, my English is not perfect. Your English is not perfect either. You're not a native English speaker, so that's not really the point. If you find the output of your students' machine translation always strange and miserable, it is maybe because the students are not aware of the linguistic distance between the Japanese language and the English language. So this is how you can cope with the problem. Number one, encourage them to add subjects for every sentence and clause before the machine process is performed. Number two, let them make explicit the number of objects serving as nouns, even in Japanese, whether the noun is singular or plural, before the machine process is performed. Number three, discourage them from writing compound sentences, complex sentences, and encourage them to rewrite it to an easy and short ones by chopping the sentences into a couple of parts. This way, a Japanese sentence will sound more compatible to the English language, so the machine will translate it with more linguistic compatibility. And once the machine translates their Japanese, they can make a stock of their stories as the topic repertoires, so each of them can be a storyteller everywhere he or she goes. If you encourage them to make a list of their FAQs about what people usually ask them about their life, it will be easier for them to speak up their mind. So here's roughly how you would encourage your students to do in the second half of the lesson. Number one, I recommend you to take a memo. Okay? Number one, make them create for themselves a list of the FAQs in their life. Number two, make them try to answer to the questions in Japanese, either on paper or on PC screen. Number three, let them rewrite the original Japanese into another type of Japanese which is compatible with the English. Number four, let them machine translate using the Google, Weblio, or Excite translation. Number five, encourage them to practice the conversations about what is asked in the FAQ list that they created previously, by talking to themselves without talking to anybody. Okay, that was number five. And number six, encourage them to make a stock of their stories as their topic repertoires, so that each of them can be a storyteller everywhere they go, even when they talk to real people. Okay, now you have understood my point. Now I want to test you if you really did understand my point. I will send you a document file with some questions in it. Well, don't be scared. They are about what I've just talked about in this video, so it's going to be easy for you. Once it is done with the results satisfactory, you are available as a teacher. And if you have any question, write to me. I will try my best to write you back as soon as possible as I can, if I find your point important. Well, sometimes I'm too busy to write you back, but that will mean you shouldn't be bothered by the trifle thing you have asked me. So do it your own style if I don't answer you. So, teachers, be perspective, creative, and confident. Good luck.